looking at chapter 4 of the Picture of Dorian Gray. So we're at this point now where we can see Lord Henry considers himself to be an artist or a sculptor, in the sense that he's using his charm and his wit and his influence almost metaphorically as the paintbrush or as the chisel. He wants to shape Dorian to turn him into a more physically attractive version of himself, or sees him as an experiment in that he wants to make Dorian as if a piece of art, to do things that maybe he wouldn't do himself, just to see as some wild experiment. So Lord Henry is wanting his art, which is Dorian, to reveal the artist, which is himself. Okay, which of course goes against the first line of the preface. So just refer back to the preface there, and you'll see what Oscar Wilde says there. In Lord Henry's mind, life and art are not only connected, but they're interchangeable. So by molding Dorian into this marvelous type of boy, he believes that he's countering the effects of an age so limited and vulgar as his own. So Lord Henry considers that he's going to, take his place amongst the artistic masters such as Michelangelo by having Dorian as his artwork. Quite a bit to discuss in chapter 4. It's a month later and Dorian is waiting at Lord Henry's place for Lord Henry to arrive, and then he thinks Lord Henry arrives, but it's actually his wife, Lord Henry's wife. And the words of Victoria, Lord Henry's wife, also sometimes known as Lady Henry to Dorian, is, "You thought it was my husband, it is only his wife." So that tells me that she recognizes that her husband treats her badly and that she doesn't have the same value, or that she's a disappointment to Dorian because she knows that Lord Henry's friends all want to see Lord Henry and not necessarily his wife. But anyway, page 55, she says, "I know you quite well by your photographs. I think my husband has got 17 of them. That's a little bit weird. But that just shows how obsessed Lord Henry is with Dorian. And the second reason how she recognizes Dorian is that she says, "I saw you with my husband the other night at the opera." Lady Henry also says, "That is one of Harry's views, isn't it?" I always hear Harry's views from his friends. And what she's referring to is about talking during music. If you hear bad music, Dorian says you must drown it in conversation and all that. But what is important there is to note that Dorian isn't the first or the last to be influenced by Lord Henry's views. And his wife recognizes that and says, I know a lot of the friends speak like Lord Henry because he is so witty and clever with his sayings. And then Lord Henry arrives and the wife leaves. Page 56, Lord Henry says, "Never marry a woman with straw-colored hair." And you think to yourself, well, that's very vain, Again, and it's all about appearance. That's very superficial, isn't it? How can you say something like that? Where's the personality there? "Never marry at all, Dorian," he goes on. "Men marry because they are tired, women because they are curious. Both are disappointed." Dorian says, "I don't think I am likely to marry Harry," which is not true because by the end of the chapter he's engaged. So when Basil said earlier in the novel to Lord Henry, "You changed too much, Lord Henry, you changed too much," we can see now that Dorian is actually also going to be changing a lot, because he's going to change his ideas and his viewpoints throughout the novel. But specifically here, he says that he doesn't think he'll ever get married, and then suddenly, yes, he is getting married. He's getting engaged to Sybil Vane. "I am too much in love." What type of nonsense is that? That is one of your aphorisms. I mentioned at the end of chapter 3 about an aphorism, and I've put it here as a definition as well. An aphorism is a short, clever saying that is intended to express some general truth. How that differs to an epigram is that an epigram is usually some witty, clever expression or remark that's put in like a funny, humorous way. Okay, so an aphorism is more like trying to explain a truth, whereas an epigram is more like just trying to sound clever. Okay, and Lord Henry makes use of both. This line I've put in pink here is important because Dorian recognizes, I am putting it into practice as I do everything that you say. So not only do we see the incredible influence that Lord Henry has over Dorian, not only does Lord Henry recognize that he has that influence over Dorian, but Dorian himself recognizes it. And us as the reader, knowing that Dorian is doing that, and we know of all the terrible things that or the bad advice and negative advice or the immoral advice often that Lord Henry says to Dorian, and Dorian is putting into practice everything that Lord Henry says, that's not good. Page 57, it's all about Dorian telling Lord Henry how he met, how Dorian tells Lord Henry about Sybil Vane. Oh yes, a description of Sybil Vane. And also Lord Henry talks about the difference between plain women being useful and other pretty women being charming and all that. And then also on page 57, Lord Henry says, my dear boy, notice how he still calls him my dear boy, even though earlier on in the novel, I think it was chapter 2, Dorian said, and I don't allow people to call me boy. But here Lord Henry couldn't give a damn about that. He keeps calling him boy. No woman is a genius woman or a decorative sex. Yes, how can you say that? That is quite misogynistic, isn't it? Almost like a hatred for women. Lord Henry is a misogynist. They never have anything to say, but they say it charmingly. So that just gives me insight, again, into the type of character that Lord Henry is. And there's that bank of information, those descriptions that we're building up over time, and how he views women. Page 57, Dorian says, Harry, your views terrify me. Okay. Yes, they are quite terrifying. Then we learn about that Dorian met Sybil Vane 3 weeks ago at the theatre, and it was the third night after viewing her on stage that Dorian actually went to go and meet Sybil. Page 58, Dorian meeting Sybil never would have happened if I had not met you, Lord Henry. Well, that's true. You filled me with a wild desire to know everything about life, blah, blah, blah. I had a passion for sensations. So the whole reason why Dorian Gray went into that sordid, ugly, grimy, immoral area of London was because Lord Henry had told him, you must search for every sensation and every experience. And so Dorian recognizes that and says, well, you know what, I have this wild passion for sensations. I felt that this grey, monstrous London of ours, with its myriad, many people, its sordid sinners. Now, sordid can physically mean dirty and squalid and shabby and grimy, ugly. Or sordid, as an adjective, can also mean, it involves immoral actions or motives. Its sordid sinners and its splendid sins. It's almost like an oxymoron there. Sins being, not good, and to put it mildly, and splendid being fantastic. So its splendid sins, as you once phrased it. So that again reiterates that Dorian is absorbing everything that Lord Henry says. And that's not a good idea. It must have something in store for me. The mere danger gave me a sense of delight. It shouldn't be giving you a sense of delight. Dodgy areas of town or sordid areas and experiences and the possible danger that you can get into should be pushing you away. It should not be attractive to you at all. Page 59, Lord Henry says, my dear boy, there's the boy again, down, condescending, downplaying, almost belittling. The people who love only once in their lives are really the shallow people. What they call their loyalty and their fidelity, I call lack of imagination. That's wrong. People shouldn't be going around cheating on their wives and multiple relationships and being unfaithful and stuff. I wouldn't call that, I wouldn't call being truthful and honest and loyal to your wife or your partner as lacking imagination. So definitely disagree with that. Page 60, Dorian says, that the first play that he went to go and watch at this horrible theatre that this monstrous Jew invited him in to watch was Romeo and Juliet, and then the description of the place just links into the sordid nature of it all. The wretched hole of a place. There was a dreadful orchestra. Romeo was a short, older gentleman. But Juliet, Harry, imagine a girl hardly 17 years of age with a little flower-like face. Notice I've put in pink. It's all description. It's all about how she looks. All right? All about appearance. Dark brown hair, eyes that were violet wells of passion, lips that were like the petals of a rose. She was the loveliest thing I'd ever seen in my life. And so nowhere is there any mention about her character or her personality. Okay? Your voice and the voice of Sybil Vane's are two things that I shall never forget. Well, that's probably true. He's never going to forget the voice of Lord Henry because he's absorbing everything and taking everything literally and putting it into practice. Sybil Vane's voice, well, I don't know. That's debatable, but let's see as we go along in the novel. Just as a sort of sideline joke there, I said that Dorian should read Sonnet 130, where Shakespeare says that all these famous, well-known, typical descriptions that are unreal and unrealistic of one's lover are ridiculous and are not a true reflection of what they look like. So this is very poetic that Dorian is talking about here. But again, as I say, it's all about aestheticism and appearance, and Lord Henry has made Dorian appreciate and enjoy his appearance so much, his own appearance so much. So of course he's going to regard it highly in other people. Page 61, Lord Henry says, "You could not have helped telling me, Dorian. All through your life you will tell me everything that you do." There again, insight. Lord Henry knows the power he has over Dorian. You will tell me everything that you do. Not really true though, because Dorian doesn't tell him about the painting changing, and he doesn't tell him about other things that he does. Don't want to give any spoilers away, but other cruel acts that he does in the novel later on in the story. Dorian says, "You have a curious influence over me. If I ever did a crime, I would come and confess it to you. You would understand me." Not true, because when Dorian later does do a crime, he does not tell Lord Henry. Lord Henry says, "People like you don't commit crimes, Dorian." What do you mean, people like you? The fact that you're good looking. Because what else could Lord Henry be talking about? Page 62 to 63 is all about how Dorian met Sybil on the third night. You can all go read about that. Page 63, though, towards the bottom of the page, Sybil says after the old Jew they refer to, kept calling Dorian Gray my lord all the time. Sybil says, "No, you look more like a prince. I must call you, Dorian, Prince Charming." And as I've said there, that becomes very important later on. Very, very important. Because James Vane only knows Dorian as Prince Charming. He doesn't know that his real name is actually Dorian Gray. And much later on in the novel, when Dorian is in an opium den, there's a lady there that says, "Oh yeah, but you're known as Prince Charming, aren't you?" So take note of that. Page 64, Dorian says, "I get hungry for Sybil's presence, and when I think of the wonderful soul that is hidden away in that little ivory body, I'm filled with awe." Okay, first of all, appearance, ivory body, but secondly of all, what are you talking about, wonderful soul? What do you know of her soul? All you ever know of Sybil Vane is the character that she's playing on stage, whether it's Juliet or Rosalind or whoever it is. So you have actually no idea about the personality of Sybil Vane. So he's talking nonsense. Lord Henry asks the very pertinent question, when is she Sybil Vane? And Dorian replies, never. And that's true. And so Lord Henry is saying, but hang on, what do you actually know of this woman? And Dorian admits, well, she's never Sybil Vane. She's always some other character. So again, how can you get engaged to somebody you don't even know what she's like? Page 65, Lord Henry watched Dorian with a subtle sense of pleasure. How different he was now from the shy, frightened boy he had met in Basil Hallward's studio. So Lord Henry is lapping up, he's enjoying, he's finding pleasure in watching Dorian change. Now Dorian may have been shy and frightened in Basil Hallward's studio, but let's not attach negative connotations to those words. He was probably a lot more innocent and level-headed and better off than he is now. And so when Basil said that he was staying with the real Dorian, looking at the painting, that was the real Dorian initially. And now poor Basil has been left out. We haven't even heard of Basil. A month later, and Lord Henry and Dorian are spending time together. Poor old Basil, who Dorian was his close friend, and we know who's infatuated with Dorian, is completely out of the picture. And that's a pity, because Basil has the only chance of saving Dorian from Lord Henry's influence. Dear Basil, I have not laid eyes on him for a week. I haven't seen him for a week. I don't want to see him alone. He says things that annoy me. He gives me good advice. Yes, Basil does give you good advice. So why is that annoying? It shouldn't be annoying. But it is annoying because for Dorian, it goes against his theories, Lord Henry's theories, and his ideas of the world, and his desire and hunger to have new sensations and experience life fully. Basil would go against that. And therefore, to Dorian, that is annoying. Page 67, to a large extent, the lad Dorian was his own, Lord Henry's own creation. He had made Dorian premature, which, his own creation links into what I said at the start of the video. He has exposed Dorian to things that Dorian would not have been exposed to until much later or even ever. So the premature part, and that's not a good thing. Page 68, it was delightful to watch him. So as I said, Lord Henry is finding immense pleasure in watching Dorian. But what's scary is that it was no matter how it all ended or was destined to end. So to Lord Henry's viewpoint, it doesn't matter how Dorian's life ends. It doesn't matter what happens to Dorian. If he crumbles, he has this tragic downfall. Lord Henry, it doesn't matter to him because it's not his life, it's somebody else's life. And he has no sense of guilt or shame in affecting somebody negatively and seeing their life crumble, which it will. Okay, so again, what kind of man is Lord Henry? Page 69, Dorian Gray was a subject made to Lord Henry's hand. Lord Henry being the artist here, sculpting Dorian. Dorian's sudden mad love for Sybil was a psychological phenomenon. The desire for new experiences. So Lord Henry's probably thinking, this whole thing about this infatuation with Sybil Vane is silly. Lord Henry knows that it's not really true love because it's only been 3 weeks, and that Dorian doesn't even know Sybil Vane's character. He only knows the actresses and the characters that she... Sorry, that's confusing. Lord Henry knows that Dorian doesn't even know anything about Sybil Vane's personality, her actual nature, only the characters that she plays on stage. But Lord Henry doesn't say anything to Dorian about, he doesn't share that information or that insight. He doesn't say, I think this is a bad idea, I don't think you should get engaged, you don't know the girl very well. He's just happy to sit and observe it and see, this is a very psychologically interesting experiment that's going on here. End of the chapter, Lord Henry reads a telegram from Dorian stating that he's engaged to be married to Sybil Vane, which goes against I don't think, Lord Henry, I'm ever going to get married. So changed very, very quickly. And that ends chapter 4.